Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 7 in our journey through Mark's Gospel. This chapter starts with an important block of teaching from Jesus and then tells us of two encounters that he has with two individuals. So first of all, the teaching. It is occasioned by a hostile question from the religious leaders asking why Jesus' disciples didn't observe the ritual hand-washing conventions that were generally seen as what religious people ought to do. Well, Jesus is pretty hard-hitting in his reply. He points out that they are hypocrites who obey some rules but have untransformed hearts. By establishing certain man-made conventions, they've found ways to get around the straightforward teaching of the law of God, the Ten Commandments. So, for example, they have a tradition whereby they were able to declare that their assets and their income were devoted to God, and they used that to avoid having to care for their parents. So they managed to look pious, while at the same time making life easy for themselves and ignoring God's command to honour their father and their mother. But then Jesus takes the opportunity to teach the crowd a very important lesson. It's about what makes a person clean or unclean. You see, verse 15. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. He further elaborates on this later with his disciples. The religious leaders, you see, thought that the problem they had to deal with was the world around them. They had to be very careful in their interactions with the world. Hands had to be washed, certain things made you unclean and so on. But for them, the issue was, as it were, out there. And Jesus turned all that thinking around entirely. The problem is not out there, he says, it's in here, it's in the heart. Look at verses 20 to 23. What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, and arrogance and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. Now, of course, that means that an external solution will not fix the problem. The religious efforts that the religious leaders relied on would not address their heart issue. They needed change on the inside. And of course, that is what Jesus comes to do. One of the old prophecies about what God would do would be to take people's hearts of stone away, their hard hearts, and give them hearts of flesh. It would be an internal solution to the human problem. New life from within. That's what Jesus brings. So what about the encounters? Well, the first is with a Syrophoenician woman, a lady who was not a Jew. She begs Jesus to drive a demon out from her daughter. And Jesus says something which at first might look a little bit odd. Verse 27. First let the children eat all they want, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Now the word he uses for dogs here is really a word that's a bit like puppies, so it's not as insulting as it first seems. But what he is saying is that he's on a particular mission and there is an order in which things are being done. He is going first to the Jews, to the Jewish people. There will be a time when the work of God will spread to the Gentiles, like this woman and like most of us, I'm sure, but it is a little way off. But this woman doesn't want to leave it at that. She accepts the order of things, but says, as it were, aren't there crumbs for puppies such as me? She's both humble and bold at the same time, and Jesus heals her daughter. Well, the next encounter, the final one, is with a deaf and mute man. People bring him to Jesus. You might remember that Jesus had told the demon-possessed man that he had healed in chapter 5, who lived in this particular region. He told him to tell others what Jesus had done for him. Perhaps this encounter is the fruit of that witness. But Jesus treats him with tremendous tenderness. He takes him aside, he touches his tongue and his ears. And we've seen from the way that Jesus deals with others that he has healed that he doesn't need to do that. This is Jesus rather adjusting himself to make himself understood by this man with his particular needs. It's a lovely reminder of the fact that Jesus, in a much more general sense, marvelously adjusts himself to come and to deal with us. And again, what we see here is Jesus doing what the Old Testament said God would do. For example, Isaiah 35, 5 and 6 speaks of God coming, and it says this, "Then will the eyes of the blind be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy." So, do we see who Jesus is? Well, in the next chapter, we're going to see that very question being asked. So, read chapter 8. I'll see you tomorrow.